Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojó ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
Welcome, everyone, to the second episode of Theoryforge Chronicles. I am FandomX, joined by Diggs, and legendary neurotoxin Sog cannot be with us tonight, but we have a special guest. Polite is here with us. How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
Doing great.
Awesome.
Great.
We are going to spend tonight kind of talking about land management and all the things that come with that within a kingdom and a duchy. But I wanted to give Polite a chance to sort of kind of introduce yourself and your role within this game and the community. So.
All right. Well, I have the estimable honor of serving as a super mod for the Chronicles of Elyria community at this time. So I get to interact with the community on a large basis almost daily, and it's really a great pleasure. But besides that, my in-game role will be as the Grand Duke of Sanctifandry within the Kingdom of Ashland on the NA West Angelica server. And I have a great cohort of citizens that I look forward to leading into that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we've all had a chance to, at least on Discord, get to meet a lot of folks. And we actually have not mentioned this on the show or anywhere else, but we will be joining. Theoryforge is going to be a county within there. So we will all be participating. We don't have a... Let me try to get I created something. I've not yet done any kind of coat of arms or anything, but... we have created our own little stamp, so I'm going to leave it right there. But anyways, it'll show up here in just a minute for you guys. As close as I could get it without completely mimicking the Elyria one. But anyway, so yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. We're going to spend the next 55 minutes or so really just digging into Chronicles of Elyria. So Diggs, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
First off, the seal looks even better and more beautiful than the last time I saw it. I was like, did you change that? That
no,
looks really beautiful.
Nothing has changed.
I know.
Thank you.
It looks beautiful. Great. So I really know very little about how this land management, the details of how all of this stuff works. I am a Care Bear, hippie, commie, chaotic good person. Soloer for the most part, so I'm coming at this game from the complete opposite end of where these kingdoms seem to be set up, and it seems like, again, cumbersome and overly micromanaging to me. The first thing I'd like to get from you, Polite, is an idea of your role play vision of what do you have? Is it a kingdom? Are you a king or a duke?
I'm a duke.
Okay. Yeah. So what is your role play vision when you're thinking about or dreaming about your duchy? What do you see? What are you hoping for?
Okay, so the lore of Sanctifandry is still in progress a lot because we're still getting information on what the actual history of Elyria is, and I want to make sure it fits into it. But the basic premise of Sanctifandry is that it's based in part on the legend of Joan of Arc from our contemporary human history. So sometime within the past of Sanctifandry, there was a near mythical figure who was a warrior, a woman who rose to prominence. She received something akin to divine inspiration on the field of battle, which led her to go on a quest to unite the various peoples of her land, which were engaged in a kind of inter-civil war and so on and so forth. And so she, throughout her travels, inspires people to her ideals and her values before uniting them into something called the Grand Duchy. And she eventually dies a martyr's death, which is why the duchy bears her name. The lore at this point is that my great ancestor, the first duke of my house, takes up her cause and her values when she dies that martyr's death and forms the duchy in her name. So that's the lore backstory of it. at a more generalized level, I see Sanctifandry as a land that strongly tries to embody lawful good tendencies. It tries to set up a lawful society to protect the citizens within it and give them a good plain atmosphere, and it tries to really go for a structured and societal development approach to it. So,
yeah, I'm smiling because I had a recruitment interview with the Baroness, and it was very rules oriented. Did you read the rules?
I can see and that channel.
Like,
yep.
I'm chaotic good. I that's completely,
See,
on the chaotic and lawful side, that's the polar opposite of who I am and how I play, which is fine. But a lawful good kingdom is not going to be completely filled with lawful good people. But it's just
exactly
fascinating for me. But I'm wondering, so what are people doing day to day? Like, how do you envision your duchy being different from others? What does it mean day to day to have a lawful good community inspired by the legend of Sanctifandry?
So in terms of difference from other domains within Chronicles of Elyria, right? Other groups.
Just in the world, this is your duchy, and you have a vision for how you want people and why people are going to come to support the duchy or live in the duchy or.
Gotcha. Well, the first
history books, not so much the lore of it, but what do you want people saying and talking about it, and this is why you want to come.
Gotcha. So the first thing to look at and what you kind of brought up there with the lawful versus the chaotic good is that while the duchy has its ideals that it wants to put at that kind of macro level, that's not necessarily going to filter down to every citizen. So the first thing that I'm looking at when setting up that for Sanctifandry is general guidelines that most people can get into, general values that they could look forward to and try and get into, but they don't necessarily have to. And so the three values of Sanctifandry are power, justice, and love, and they kind of go on a scale in that regard. That power is a very practical ideal to strive for. Love is a very idealistic ideal to strive for. Justice is the middle of the two of them. And so when I'm hoping people think about Sanctifandrians, I'm hoping that they think about people who understand that you can't always go for the ideal, but at the same time, working together as a collective tends to have more benefits than working apart as a disunity. When looking towards trusting your neighbor and so on, you can't do it completely based on reasons of love. You have to do it for an understanding that there's a justice system in place. There's an expectation of punishment in regards to crimes or advantage being taken on others. But at the same time, it's that understanding of trying to strive for love and the underlying idealistics that also elevates you up to that point. You can't get there based on cold logic alone. So that's kind of the mixing of what Sanctifandry is. It's general but specific at the same time.
But how does that work on a day-to-day basis? Like when I wake up in the morning, I'm not going to be thinking, oh, it's a beautiful day for love, or it's a beautiful day for power, like this, especially if it's
exactly
good.
Exactly.
So I know that Phantom, for his community, he has a focus right now on farming. And I think my Baroness has a focus, and it might be even at a higher level than that, but there seems to be a focus for exploration. And so for both of those communities, I have some idea of what might be happening day to day. I wake up and I start working on crops, or I wake up and I start working on diplomatic travels. What the average people like what will we be doing day to day besides just power? It's not going to be a military focused place.
Gotcha. So that's kind of where the different tiers of focus in Chronicles of Elyria comes to play, because you're saying, right, you're not going to wake up and be thinking of the ideals of Sancta Fandra in the back of your mind as an average citizen. And from the get-go, I understand that, and anyone who's building a kingdom or a duchy or even a county has to understand that those ideals are not going to filter down to the general citizenry. And you're saying, what is the average citizen going to be doing in a duchy? Well, that's actually not my thing to determine. That's where you're going to get those focuses more from your settlement level, your county level, and your personal ambitions. To me, the ducal and kingdom role more is to set up these broad structures, like a judicial system. You're not going to be getting the entire basis of a judicial system at a settlement level that then allows you to, as a citizen, have a kingdom level market to access. That judicial system isn't going to come from a settlement. It's going to come from a kingdom being implemented by a large number of players who see the value that has in terms of ensuring that goes through. And so that's where the focus of the duchy and the kingdom administration and government and so on is, in my opinion. Something that you brought up a bit earlier in the stream as well is that there's a lot of rules, and there's a lot of micromanagement being done. And it's important to, in my opinion as well, understand in Chronicles of Elyria that we have a large limitation on resources compared to the real world. So a lot of people try to approach it similar to making a real world government. We'll have a bureau of taxation, we'll have a department of census, and so on and so forth. And those are good things to look into, but at the same time, we don't have anywhere near the manpower. We don't have the motivation for people to sit down and do bureaucratic work all day. And we don't have, there's some third point that I'm forgetting, but we don't have the manpower, we don't have the resources to do that. And so groups need to be looking at these structures and see, how can I most cost effectively manage these structures, make it interesting and engaging for people to get into, and start grassroots movements for those things. And that's where the kind of generalized and idealistic nature of those ideals comes in. It's supposed to be something that counts and settlements can plug into their own values, their own twists, their own focuses, but at the same time reap the benefits of that overarching structure, that overarching stability.
Yeah, it's just strange. Again, for me, it seems super cumbersome. I don't know why that's supposed to be fun. I don't know why I'm supposed to be happy to be joining Sancta Fandra. I don't know. Like it doesn't sound like fun.
Well, for you, Diggs, it seems like it'd be a perfectly reasonable place with a focus on justice. Among the other two. I would imagine your not wanting to PvP would definitely be a lot easier to achieve if you just stay away from the places where there's fighting. And I'm sure there'd be a lot of places where there's not fighting. So there'd be plenty of places for you to just do your thing.
Why Sancta Fandra? That's my point. I don't understand what makes these places special, and it's all, to me, again, it's all rules and cumbersome rules and mechanics. There's no fun in this world. But that's because of my play style. So I'm wondering, Neuro, are you excited about this level of management, and what makes it exciting for you? What is getting you excited about participating in this land management at any level?
Who, me?
You.
No.
I just mean experiencing joining a group.
I think that means he doesn't want to do land management.
That's why I'm taken to the road. I don't want to deal with land management. I want to be a free agent, opening doors for everyone else as I travel along and see the world. Like that's my whole spiel. I'm going to have a home somewhere, and I'll definitely participate with things going on in areas, but I'll more or less consider my character a citizen of Elyria, not of any one specific area.
What package level did you come in at?
Adventurer.
Okay. What about you, Phantom?
I mean, the whole thing for me is exciting and a little kind of terrifying at the same time. And I think part of it's because this is kind of a grand experiment. I can't really think of another game like this, another world like this, a Meow, that is going to try to implement something like this. So there's a little bit of, we want to make sure it works, but I think it's exciting. I tend to wonder if part of the boredom is that right now it's just in a sort of pre-planning, theoretical kind of community stage. There's nothing to go out and experience yet because, I could see where that might make you think, well, why should I care? But, I think everyone's hope and the excitement is once it gets in there, once things get started, it's going to be a very interesting, for many different reasons, and for reasons we're not used to, a very interesting world to be in. But I'm a little terrified. You have to obviously operate within the rules and the laws of the kingdom and the duchy, but then at the same time try to manage, actually have a direct role managing what other players and say Theoryforge is going to need. That's going to take a lot of planning, and I'm up to that, obviously, or I wouldn't be coming in, as a count. But there's a little bit of, wanting to make sure it's going to work right, because you're going to actually, as opposed to, I guess the only equivalent I can think of is maybe if you're a leader in a guild, right, you might have to be responsible or accountable to 10, 20 people, maybe. And here, it's going to be hopefully to a much larger group of people, and you just want to make sure it's done right. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really interested once we start actually getting into, building the lands and connecting roads and connecting settlements and trying to help make sure everyone has what they need to grow. I envision myself as making sure everyone operates under the rules that are set forth, but then also trying to allow everyone to grow in a way that they want to grow and just try to facilitate that. So hopefully I'll have time to farm myself, but we'll see.
So when I think about Ashes of Creation and what the settlements are going to be like there, I know the kinds of things and why I want to join communities there. I know that I'm probably going to want to focus on a city and town that has the racial organizations and the racial focuses. It's going to allow me to, there has to be places in the world that allows me to complete my racial progression. There's 4 types of settlements you can have: scientific, economic, divine, and military. So I know I'm not going to want to be in a military settlement. I know that I'm probably going to want to be in a scientific settlement or a divine settlement. I have an idea of what I want to be doing in these settlements day to day, which again, I just don't have no feel for in Chronicles of Elyria, besides just follow the rules.
I guess let me ask you this, Diggs. Is there more information that you would need to know about the mechanics and systems of the game to better? I
don't give a fuck about the mechanics. That's my point. I want to know where the fun is, and the fun is not in the mechanics. Okay, there's going to be something underlying the game. There are going to be rules there, but I just want to live in a world. I don't want to know the physics and all of that. Okay, the moisture in the air is going to interact with the molecules in this manner, and it's going to be very realistic. Okay, but what does that mean?
You get to choose.
So what do you want to do in Chronicles of Elyria? What do you see as an idealistic way of, without any, worrying about the mechanics and just assuming it's going to be a fantasy world? What would you see as your ideal playstyle, or what you want to do? I know I read a bit on your recruitment, but I'd like to see. I don't want to put that information public if you don't know. I want to live in a fantasy world, and I want it to feel like I have a role in the world. What I've been hearing is that my group will be escorting caravans and be connecting places together, settlements together in terms of diplomacy, and I like diplomacy, so I'm kind of down for that. Okay. But that doesn't tell me again. So I know the focus of my smaller community. I don't know what the focus again is of the larger community and how that fits into the overall structure. But then there are things like, I'm reading. I was just reading today about mayors and counts and dukes and kings being able to set these laws. And then what happens when the laws are broken, and how do they know if the laws are broken? And
I don't understand how any of that really even functions. Are the NPCs telling you that laws got broken? What's going on there?
From what we've seen of the developers talking about, the NPCs can see laws being broken and report those. Players can as well. That gets into the mechanics of law creation and the justice administration system, which we've been asking for a while. We've gotten a bit of information from the developers, but it's still something that they're working through and so on. But so we can go into that if you'd like. I think that's more of a mechanics discussion. But if I could circle back to where you were talking about, you want to be, you want to feel like you have a role to play, and you're in a world where you're making waves, or you have something to interact with and so on. And so I think that's where you're seeing this complexity or this non-specificity of COE come out and actually do what you're looking for. So you're saying, what is going to be the overall goal of a kingdom or a duchy or these larger communities and so on. And Chronicles of Elyria is closer to simulation of a world, and so you don't really have that for these structures. It's similar to asking what's a real world country's overall goal or arcing thing. Well, it's to provide a good society for its people and provide a rule of law and so on.
No, I know if a kingdom is into slavery or not into slavery. I mean, I know if they're into commerce or not into commerce. I know if they have a focus on the arts, or I know the difference between the feel of a Native American civilization versus a European civilization versus a Japanese civilization. I know why I want to go to Tokyo or why I want to go to visit a Native American village. I know those things.
Gotcha. Well, the unfortunate aspect is a lot of the stuff that we have right now is just communal relations. We could set as a kingdom, hey, we're going to be a very trade-oriented kingdom. That's what we're going to go for. But when it comes down to map selection, where is our kingdom going to end up? That's hard to say. It's hard for any kingdom to say. And it's hard to have a set of ideals and then get into a geographic situation that doesn't work for those, right?
Which is part of my other problem with the way it seems like it's coming at everything backwards, because and I just have to say, for people who don't know, the recruitment to join these communities is like hardcore. I must be in like 5 different community channels just for Chronicles of Elyria. It's kind of crazy.
Well, and those are completely not mandatory.
No, I'm just saying people are coming, they're forming one, but then there are just so many who are coming at you to, join. If you have questions, you want to be with us. I mean, I haven't seen anything like this in other games.
It's like passion taken to a whole new level. Yeah.
I was going to say, what you might think is crazy, some might just call a very good community.
I mean, it could be that. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying it's just amazing to see how much of that is going on.
I mean, to me, it's welcoming that I made one post and like everybody's like, "Oh man, what you're sounding like is so awesome! Totally, you should come check us out. Here's our Discord. Come join us. We'd love to have you." It's like, wow, that's super welcoming. I don't get that in any game.
Well, it's the community chomping at the bit. It's the community chomping at the bit to get more and more and more, and they want more from the developers so they can develop these systems more. And in that vacuum of hard information, people try to make do with what they can. They try to make the structures they can, and they'll adjust those as mechanics come out. But that's where we're at. Yeah, it's an overabundance of passion and people wanting to make that world.
Diggs, I don't know if you're watching the chat. There's actually a very good comment in there. Jackson Gora says, first learn about Elyria, think about what you want to do in Elyria, and then start looking for people with like-minded interests, and the rest will fall in place. That actually sounds like good advice.
But it doesn't, because like Polite was just saying, you can't even really effectively choose where your place is going to be. Like, again, when I think about forming communities and nations of creation, we'll get into the game, we'll travel to the geographic regions that we like, and then we'll start trying to build up the kind of racial settlements or the kind of scientific divine settlements that we want, which seems much more organic than forming these communities in advance and not really knowing where you're going to be or if it's going to be
So I think I might see the disconnect here, and this is something that's come up a lot on the Chronicles of Elyria forums. Specifically, there's been a lot of people talking about when it comes to domain selection. A lot of people have for a long time pushed at the developers in regards to, I have a king that I am sure that I want to be under this king. He meshes so well with me. He's on the same wavelength of what I want to do. I don't want to go with these other kings who don't have a personality match of what I want to do, and I fear that if I do have to work with them, my play experience isn't going to be as well. And so these people have been kind of pushing back and say, I want to make sure that I'm with this king. The way the domain selection works with influence order, it could be that how payments or the influence of an account comes out, I might be forced to put my county or whatever into a different kingdom. And so I think, Diggs, the reason why this is so different from you is because for your play style, and there's nothing wrong with this, you're more interested with how you interact with the world as opposed to necessarily having to rely on what others are doing for your thing. Now, as a count play style, if that's what some person is really trying to aim for, what others are doing in relation to them matters a lot. They can't just pick up, move their county somewhere else if it turns out that their neighbors are not people that they like. And so that's why I think you've seen a lot of passion in the community building at this point. Because if you're a count, you might say, hey, I really want to be a trade county. I don't care where I end up so long as I can be a trade county. So when it comes to domain selection, I'm going to put my county in a place that's a great waterway so I can make sure that I'm going to be a good commercial center. But, the other consideration that you're having as a count is, well, who are my neighbors going to be? Am I going to have this guy next to me who's a, hardcore PvP player? His stated goal is that he wants to conquer 3 more counties next to him and take over. And now I'm in his warpath. And, not only did I don't want to get into the money aspect, but not only did I pay a lot of money for this county, but now once I've put this county down, I'm stuck there. I have to make do with that game. And so a lot of times the community building that you're seeing at this point, it is premature. Don't get me wrong. We're incredibly early in on Chronicles of Elyria for where it is in terms of planning and designing these things. But a lot of it is because people realize that once they're in this world, it's the sort of world where you can't just pick up, pack your bags, and go somewhere else if where you're at doesn't work for you. And so finding people of a like mind, people that you can work with, people that you can work with for a long time, especially because you're looking to commit years to this game, hypothetically, hopefully. You need to find a good community in that case. Or some people feel they have to find a good community. I don't want to say that you have to do that. Some people have gone for that aspect. There's tons of people in the background who are just, they pop in, they see where the update is in terms of development. They say, okay, I'll get more into planning and designing and figure out where I want to go when I have more hardcore to see where the fun is. What you're saying, I want to be a caravan guy. Well, at this point, it feels like every kingdom could have a caravan guy. They're all generic saying we want to do good things. We want to have a lawful community. We want to have a safe place for people to play. Some people are doing slightly different things, but there's not too much variety. Well, we can't really get that variety, but what we can see is we can see each other. We can interact with each other. We can play games with each other. We can see how each other thinks. And that's mostly what the community is organizing around right at this point.
Well, so, wow, there's a lot to unpack there.
Sorry, I kind of word splurged over you.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good. When I played Neverwinter Online, which was the last MMORPG, true MMORPG I really played, other than Landmark, and I am playing Bless Online and having fun playing Bless Online right now, actually. In Neverwinter Online, I played an ice wizard. And I mostly soloed and duoed. I duoed a lot. When the two of us got to endgame and we started running dungeons with a guild that was formed based on a streamer that we followed. When we started going into these dungeons, they started telling me, why aren't you using repel powers? You should be using magnetism to throw people off ledges. And I'm like, I'm an ice wizard. I do not do repel. If you want repel, get a repel wizard. I'm an ice wizard. And so, that's my role. That's my role in the world. I'm a master of ice. And so if that's what I'm hoping to be, and I find myself in a desert that doesn't have access to ice, well, yeah, I'm probably going to have to leave to go to a place where I could do my ice thing, regardless of the community. So yeah, I would love to hang with my community of players, which might end up having to be different from who I'm hanging out as a character, because the players are great, but
the environment is not.
Developing for characters and environment might not fit. And that just seems, again, strange to me that we're putting all this effort. It just seems the wrong end of the stick to me.
I got you.
But I do want to jump in. I don't even know where we're at right now. We've got a pretty good time. So what are you thinking in terms of EP? Is it exposition points?
Exposition points, yep.
Yeah. Are you gathering that? Are you actively asking for that? What are you doing, and what are you thinking of in terms of how much EP you need and how you're gathering that at the moment? And while we're waiting for more information, and while the store had, I think we just closed that ability to purchase EP.
No, EP is still on the store. There was a better dollar to ratio or dollar to EP points pack that went away, but you can still buy EP.
All right. So how is all of that factoring into your duchy building at the moment?
Gotcha. Well, the first thing I want to say in regards to exposition points is a lot of times, especially when there's virtual currencies that come into play, a lot of people can say, well, you need this, you need this certain amount. If you're not getting this much, you're not going to be competitive. You might as well just not play the game. The first thing is you can't get into that mentality with EP. You get a certain amount of exposition points with your package. It's meant to be something where you can customize your location a bit to fit what you personally, passion-wise, want to do. It's it gets into that what you were talking about earlier. If how do I make my environment fit what I want to do? Well, exposition points are a bit there to help you with that. But you can't get caught up into, well, I need this certain amount of EP, or I might as well just not play the game. People try and stay away from that mentality, but at the same time, there's kind of an underlying current of it. And I want to, first of all, speak against that. For me personally, in terms of exposition points, I have a fair amount. I've mostly been getting those because I want to support the studio, help them through development and so on. And on the other side, it helps with specifying down and getting a location closer to what your players want to do. So like you were saying before, what if I'm in a desert? Well, you can't terraform a desert, but if you are in a desert and you want to be a orchard maker, maybe perhaps you can buy some trees with EP that work in the desert and, get closer to what you want to do if you're ideal, if you didn't start off with an orchard that works for you. The other side of EP spending for me specifically is at the duchy level, I'm looking at a large amount of people who are pledging to my location, who want to play in this location, and I want to make this location work for them. And the two main things that I see in regards to that are infrastructure and security. I don't want to get into it the first day, and we have groups coming in that are taking, that are rolling on mayors, beating them to death with sticks, and then they perma-die, they lose their title, and they got to play the game all for 1 week as the mayor they were dreaming of for years, and now they're rolled out. And so my spending with EP, how I want to distribute community EP, is looking at protecting those people as much as I can, be putting in systems in place, putting groups together who trust each other, who want to work with each other, who, if they see this occurring, want to raise a call among each other, bringing support, reinforcements, and so on. What can I do with EP to make battlements, to make supply depot dumps for troops, to make roads, to increase trade, so that the guy who's sitting in that settlement who say, hey, I got stuck in this settlement because I wanted to play with my friends, but I really want to be a trader, but there's no roads. Well, hey, I put the infrastructure in place, hopefully as a duchy, to help that spread so that you can get more into the playstyle that you want to do. That's my focus for EP. It's just go back a little bit to what you were saying earlier. There's this concern of going backwards in it, right? You're narrowing yourself down to a certain place on the map where you hypothetically could be because you want to be with your friends who have now pledged in this location, and they're making these kind of social obligation ties, and you don't want to break that. At the same time, you have to look at what your enjoyment is going to be for the game. And so when we come to the main selection, we're already expecting there's going to be a lot of people shuffling about because they're going to see, Kingdom that I initially thought would be fine is now going to go into this location that's not going to be fine for my playstyle. And now people are going to have these dilemmas to choose, do I stay with community? Do I stick with my playstyle? Do what makes you happy. Do what is good for the game for you. You have to look into yourself and see, am I going to be more concerned with who I'm playing with, or am I going to be more concerned with what I'm doing? And just go for what works for you. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, but I guess my question there is because I'm still going to be connected to the players regardless of where my character is. But what I'm saying is that who then knows what will really happen to all this planning once we get into the game, and if we get in and it's not.
Oh, I can tell you what will happen to that planning. It's going to fall apart. It's going to fall apart. And it's
but I'm saying all this, we've got these communities that we're working towards, and I guess that's just kind of my disconnect with all of these mechanics is like, it sounds nice in terms of mechanically putting a world together, but it just is a disconnect for me in terms of.
Does it work when it hits the game? Yeah, when it hits the real world.
But that's why there's dozens and dozens of Discord communities, right? Because you're wanting to, this is such a community-based game. I mean, that's why it's so important, I think, right now to form these relationships, these communities, is so that there is a smooth, imagine trying to do this and you just met everyone on the same server the same day.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I'm in different levels of the same group. Like,
it's the
there's
planning.
a separate level for the town and for the city and for the
and that explains the depth and that's the depth of the game.
to talk to that
I mean, I don't even day to day. I'm not like, oh my. I mean, I don't know. It's just.
Well, if I could, for me, I say when you're planning something out and you're making a plan, you're making a system, the value isn't in the plan. It isn't in the system. The value is in having sat down and thought about these things first so that when things do fall apart, because things are going to fall apart, things are going to majorly fall apart once we actually start getting into the real world of Elyria in terms of having to figure out domain selection, having to figure out, oh, hey, this random group that you never accounted for who's an incredibly aggressive group is now suddenly your neighbor. How is that going to factor into your plans? How are you going to adjust on that? Having sat down and done that pre-planning will at least give you a little bit of an edge, and that's what people are looking for. It'll give you a little bit of a prior knowledge, a prior planning that you can work off of. You're not going to lose your entire plan. You'll probably lose most of it, but the parts that remain behind, that core nugget that you can then build on again, that helps you out. It helps you go faster. It helps you react to the game faster, because Elyria is going to be very much a game where you have to be able to react quickly, because once the consequence happens, you can't roll back to time. You can't revive your character, and hey, you're fine. Go repair your armor and you're back to where you were before. Don't worry too much about the consequences. And so that's a lot of what I feel people are doing planning for. The other side of it with that is that actually, I lost my train of thought. Never mind. I lost my train of thought. I wanted to say something else, but I forgot what you were saying.
You brought up another question for me, though. So when I read about settlements online, it went again kind of from the other direction. So it was going from starting with a hamlet, I guess, and then building up to a village, and then building up into a town or city. And that was based on how many parcels of land are together, and going from maybe 9 people, and then you go from 10 to 25. So it sounds like without buying these packages, just going into the world, you would be wanting to gather more people to your settlement. Like there has to be a minimum number of people in order to have the settlement function correctly. So when you're coming from the other direction, how does that work in terms of making sure that you have the minimum number of people in your duchy for that to work the way you're hoping it will work? Like, is there a minimum number? Do you have to have? Do you know what that is? Is that a
no? Not for domains. Domains don't have a certain number. They don't have tiers like settlements do in terms of going from hamlet up to city and so on. A domain is just a domain. It'll have a certain number of people who are contributing to it, of course, which then allows it to have power on the world stage. But it again depends on what that duchy wants to do. If it's a duchy or group of people who just want to pursue technology, maybe there are guys that want to be the first cross-ocean voyage in Elyria, and they just want to make technology. And so to them, they don't care about having a large population of people that are making armaments and stuff. They just want to do their thing research-wise, get people with good skills, and go from there. So It kind of works like that. Focus-wise, in terms of my duchy, I just want to provide a good environment for people, and then we'll figure out more from there a world plan to aspire to once we see what the map's like and such.
But I mean, don't you
lay out?
You can't have a duchy with just 25 people, can you?
You could. It wouldn't be a very effective duchy. It'd be most of a ghost town, but you certainly could.
Huh. Okay.
You're gonna have NPCs doing their thing. You could have a low proportion of players, which would be probably unfortunate in terms of fun. But there's nothing mechanically that's gonna stop you from doing that.
Okay. Phantom.
Yes, sir.
You are what, at the mayor level?
Count.
What level are you? You're at the count level, so that's right below Duke. I don't know where that falls in the.
It's King, Duke, Count, Mayor.
Right. Okay. So, how is your planning going? How are you feeling about whatever planning you're doing so far?
Actually, that kind of leads into something I was thinking as you're talking is, and what is unique is that, like me and Neuro, we're going to have, while we might be in some sort of the same community, or me and you, we're going to have very different play styles, right? Because we're going to have very different functions versus like World of Warcraft, where we all go in and raid or harvest or whatever. We all generally do the same thing, maybe with different people, but we do the same thing. Our experience is going to be so different. And I think that can maybe be go ahead.
I was going to say it's a whole lot of being different parts of doing the exact same thing in like WoW raids and stuff like that. And really in static MMOs, you're doing the same thing as everyone else. You're just doing it with potentially different components. And this, of course, is completely different in one major respect, of course, because it isn't just going to be coming in as like a class system. You're not just going to walk in as a warrior and you're expected to take blows for everybody in heavy armor with a two-handed sword or a shield or whatever. It's a lot more nuanced. The fact that I almost think of like a revival and the idea of someone in Crown's Rock. You're not just going to look at them and be like, oh, that guy is a swashbuckling rogue. I can see his class from here. You would actually have to get to know the person. Maybe all of that equipment they have is just for show and they're just an actor. And, you would have no idea unless you talk to them. Maybe they're some sort of duelist from out of the area. So like that's the sort of thing that I think is really interesting, is the idea that not only is there not coming in with a finite class system and you're locked into doing one specific thing, but it's also that you're really having to actually know the people, actually get to know them, to know what they're capable of. That was one of the things I think was really refreshing about Ultima Online, though I was really young at the time and still didn't fully grasp it at first. But the idea that you don't know what anybody really is, what their allegiances are. I assumed most people who were wearing the ghost garb in town begging actually had boatloads of stuff in their pockets, because every now and then when I pickpocket one of them, I would see that. So, but whatever, that's their job. That's their version of being a beggar. So to each their own. And I think that's one of the things that's going to be really fun, is the spice of life that comes from each and every player playing the game in their own different ways, and how that contributes not just to each kingdom and each region, but just to the actual interactions between the players themselves, and how that moves the game forward and becomes the things that lead to historical events in the future.
And how that has run-on effects on what players do as a consequence, and the value that they get from those consequences. When you pickpocket that guy and you find out he is actually a beggar who's scamming people, you have a lot more like, wow, I found something out about the world there where it defied my expectations. There's good and bad aspects to it. The good aspect of more traditional and static MMOs these days is that you have an expectation of what you're going to be doing, what you need to be doing. You can just get into it, and if you have fun with that, great. But if you don't have fun with that, there's not much flexibility. You're stuck with it. If you don't like it, then you kind of have to leave the game. With Chronicles of Elyria, you're going to come in and you're not going to know what you're going to be doing. There's going to be a world out there you're going to have to explore. You're going to have to find something in it. But the good side of it is there's going to be so much to discover. And if you don't like what you're seeing, maybe you go somewhere else and you find something else. I think you can I don't want to necessarily make the comparison, but you can look at D&D. You know, with Dungeons and Dragons, when you have a DM who's a human player in the background making the world, you don't know what to expect from the world. You know, if your DM rolls out a character who's dressed like this, he might be that paladin class that you're expecting him to be, or he might be something that your DM is being sly about. And that's sort of what Chronicles of Elyria can give to you as well. You know, you say, hey, why should I settle in this land versus this land? Well, why should you start in this town versus this town in the world of Faerun in a Forgotten Realms campaign? You know, you go into the world and you find out what it has for you, and you pursue the stories that it gives you. And if Chronicles of Elyria can deliver upon that, it's going to be great for players.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Well, I mean, going back to your original question, you know, it's interesting me listening to your question, sort of what my role is, because a lot of what you just hasn't even fit into my head yet, because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, how am I going to, you know, it's just such a different experience. How am I going to plan roads correctly? How am I going to make sure people have resources where they need them? You know, how am I going to allow them to grow a settlement in a way that they're happy, but they're also contributing so that my other counts and my other people above me don't get angry, but also, you know, again, so that they're happy. I wish Sog was here because, you know, he wants to be a mayor, and he said he'd be a mayor in Theoryforge. Well, I'm going to have to make him happy, right? He could very well get everyone else and knock me off if he didn't like what I was doing. I quit bringing him barley. He could no longer make his drinks. That's actually where my thought process, and for me is, and I guess something that's refreshing or different, is that's just not a position I've ever been in with a game like this, and it's different. It's exciting for me, but I think that's just where we're kind of disconnected in how you are looking at coming into the game versus where other people are. Now, not everyone's going to be in, you know, a mayor or a count or that sort of thing. So, you know, I think the questions you ask are incredibly important because that's going to be the bulk of the players coming in.
You know, so, something you said there really got me excited. The idea that this might be the first game where it actually matters for players to go on strike, to stop paying taxes, to stop, you know, producing and sending the resources, or they produce them but they just accumulate them. That's the sort of thing that, you know, I bet maybe there's MUDs. I would imagine Sog would be saying that that's something that could happen in IKEA, for example. But obviously, that's the sort of thing that would have a lot of consequences if a lot of people aren't willing to participate. And then it's also, you know, to what extent are you trying to oust the mayor? You know, trying to usurp the duchy? Like, what are you trying to do? And that's the thing that I think is really interesting, because when you do something like that, the rest of the kingdom might not really take your side, and, you know, you're going to be having a lot of pressure from the outside to fold and cave in, and then leaders will be punished and this and that. So, you know, that's a really interesting thing to me. The idea that you know, actively resisting and fighting the law, but not doing it by just going out and, you know, clubbing people and burning stuff down is a viable thing to do in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think right at Sog's level, he knows that he wants to manage this tavern, and that's the focus, and have beer, and that's it, right? So I get that at that level. In Revival, one of the differences there, and one of the differences in the way I've played D&D, in D&D, I've primarily played the modules, or the DM was very good at creating a city where I understood what the NPCs are doing. I understand what the focus of the city is. I know if it's heavily populated by halflings, it's going to be very different than a place that is heavily populated by dwarves and is heavily populated by elves. And that's another kind of somewhat of a problem with Chronicles of Elyria, is that we don't have as good a feel of what the races are as we do for D&D. I'll have to do a follow-up question with you really quickly, Polite, in a little bit. But in Revival, the city was established. I could look at the map and I could pick out my house, and I could see the history of each house and the streets and the neighborhoods. And so I understood that city very well in terms of how I wanted to interact with it. I knew that I was a neighbor of Phantom, and I was hoping that once we had characters in the game, we could start, even before the combat is even ready, we could start having parties. We have our houses. Once our characters are in the world, we can start having parties. And so I know what I could be doing in that place. With Chronicles of Elyria, I know, okay, so I would like to be with these people, but are we going to be able to build the houses that we want to build?
Gotcha.
All of that stuff. I don't know that that's going to be as easy.
So let me ask you, in that D&D game, how do you go about creating your character? Does your DM kind of sit down and say, hey, here's the settlement that we're going to be playing in, here's the lore of it, here's the history, here's the racial composition of it, and then you sit down and you make a character that works for it? Or do you make the character and then the DM provides you with that, or how does it go?
So on my Bartle score is 87% explorer and like 65% socializer. So I create my character based on class or profession and race and role. And I know that I'm probably going to be the stealthy guy, have something to do with health. I am a care bear, so I try to avoid combat as much as possible. It's important to be a rogue or a bard so that I can up my skills. And I have high charisma, and I use my charisma to avoid combat. Then once we get into the world, I go through and I make friends with the NPCs, and I make sure I understand the city that I'm in, and I can go in and the city is going to be established instead of me having to build the city. So I can go and explore what that city is about and learn what it's about. And
it has a history to it, right? It has dynamics that are already in place when you go into the world.
That's right. Right.
Exactly. Okay. So that's what Exposition does for you in Chronicles of Elyria. When you come in day one as a new character, that settlement has already been there. It's gone through Exposition. It's gone through Kingdoms of Elyria. It's already had player drama over it. You might come into that settlement and it might be, hey, this Baron that you're part of, she got screwed over by that count next door in Kingdoms of Elyria, and she hates him. And so you come in day one, and there's a history to the settlement that you're finding out about, or the
but
the
there's
world.
Not when we get to Exposition, right? We still have to get to Exposition, and Exposition may not fit with all this stuff that we're doing right now. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. So for lower level players who are you just want to be a citizen level person doing your own personal story in the world, it might be better to wait and see what the world gives you and then craft it similar to that. It's sort of like if you're a D&D player trying to make your character while your DM is still making the campaign in his head. You can try and work with him, but how do you know what the campaign is going to end up being, what his goal of what the setting is going to be, and so on and so forth. And so it's kind of a question of how early you get on the train in that regard. But even before Exposition, there's development going on in the world. Even before players touch anything domain selection wise, the world is going to be spawned with a history to it. We don't know what that history is so much. Caspian's gone over a few ages of time that has occurred in Elyria and these cataclysmic events and so on that has occurred. So that's going to give us a bit of history to find out as well. When we're looking at those settlements and those domains and so on. But all of that is what comes to the conjunction of giving you this living, breathing world day one for a player to come into and explore and find out about the world and then develop their character and so on.
Right, but I'm saying, but it's not really that, because we're kind of developing our characters and our character interests already.
That's for this small subset.
Well, those were questions for recruitment. And then, but still, as I'm joining so if I'm coming into a D&D game, I'm not joining a settlement, probably, right? I'm not a citizen necessarily of that place. I could just be, right?
It's up to the campaign.
Yeah, but it's not as strong as what I'm encountering for Chronicles of Elyria, and here, right, we're developing what we want these communities to be without, again, knowing if that's really going to be the case once we get to Exposition, or, even in terms of, again, if I want to live in an ice or a cavern or in a cave system in the Arctic, because I'm an Arctic dwarf, I can build that, and then my DM is going to work around that for me. He's going to add that into his campaign development if it doesn't exist in the campaign module already. But here, I don't know if my community is actually going to end up, or even if they want to be. I don't know where they want. I don't even know where people want to be in the world yet. But we're going to have to get ready for questions maybe. But my other question to you in terms of that is, do you have an idea already about racial makeup, or is that not a concern for you?
What race I would
race and culture.
What race and culture I would want to aim for
your citizens,
my citizens and so on.
Yeah.
In terms of that, with how influence works in domain selection, I don't want to make anything hard, but I do prefer looking at the Naren tribe, the Broodveer tribe, the Hrothi tribe, and the Taurisk at this point. But I want to be flexible. I want to see what people as a whole want to do. We'll be doing polls as we get closer to domain selection. Unfortunately, that's another aspect where the world's just not developed enough. We don't have a map to know, make a hard decision on that.
Great. Guys, do we want to take any questions? We only have a few minutes left, but I don't know if we have questions or from the chat, I mean.
Yeah, I don't know if we got any specific ones.
No, nothing that's come through. But certainly, if anyone does have any questions, just put them in there.
Here, I'll ask one that I had earlier. Would adherents of Sancta Foundry have more protections or more leeway or more stature, like people that either in a religious context or some sort of religious / defending the land sort of thing? Would they be considered on a higher tier? Would they have to be like a state sanctioned sort of thing? Would you as a state entity sanction that sort of thing? I'm just curious.
Like sort of special privileges depending on your religious orientation or what your value.
Yeah, but not just saying it, but full on. Yeah, you get actual. You do the 2 hours of sword drills every day, and you do your poetry group once a week or whatever the things are that are required to be considered an adherent. That's the sort of thing. Would you actually be interested in someone codifying something like that and having it as not necessarily the official religion, but something that kind of takes the that creation myth and makes it a little bit more concrete in the world?
I sure would. It's actually in my recruitment post that I'm looking for people interested in religion and exploring that aspect to try and build that up. I have a pretty big lore document that I've been working on for that, but we're at that early stage of the world, so we got to see what Caspian gives us and such. But yes, absolutely be interested in that.
Very cool.
There have been some questions, actually.
Okay, I have a quick question from Morbus. I'm supposed to ask Polite why you are so polite. Polite?
Oh, why am I so polite? So I'll go really quickly. The origin of my name comes from my early days of browsing internet forums, including one that might have started with the number 4. In a large amount of time, I found that when people discuss things on forums, there's an abundance of cool information that you can learn. There's people from all walks of life who know all kinds of different things. But every now and then when you're having these conversations or discussions or these debates and so on, people can kind of get dragged down into, flame wars. It starts off with people giving information, and then it starts just being insults being thrown back. And it just devolves into insults, and there's no good information to be gained at that point. And I noticed that I myself would get involved in that sometimes, where at a certain point halfway through the conversation, my concern would be more with insulting the other guy and making him feel bad than actually getting my point across. And so at that point, I want to take on the name Polite just so I could discipline myself from doing that and try and possibly help encourage others from doing that. Because, the internet's a great place for learning information, not for necessarily flaming each other.
Good answer.
There's some good questions here. Polite, who is your favorite Duke in Ashland?
Oh, my favorite Duke in Ashland would have to be the Duchess of Fioralba, who is my consort for the game. So that was an easy question.
I'm just going to go straight down. Who is your favorite COE moderator?
My favorite COE moderator? Ooh, boy. I could say the same answer as before, but I'm going to go with Noslim. Noslim is a testament to putting in the man hours behind the scenes to make something work, to make a team work, to make the community as vibrant, passionate, and non-toxic as it is.
Now it's starting to scroll real fast. Let me try to keep up. What's the thing you'd most like to see or discover in Elyria? I don't know if that's for all of us or just you. But
Thing I would most like to see or discover in Elyria. It's hard. The thing I would most like to see in Elyria is players being blown away at how much run-on effects they're going to have from the world. I want to see a group of players get invaded by another kingdom, lose half of their kingdom, and then decide that they're going to appeal to another kingdom, be annexed into them and absorbed into them, and then that changes the power dynamic of the continent to lead two other groups to form an alliance, which then leads to another one coalition deciding that they need to preemptively attack them, and it just has run-on effects. And then you get to cities where the kings are sitting across the table arguing each other that they've disrupted the concert of Elyria, and now we're falling into chaos, and we need to start a new system of power balance and such. That's the kind of stuff I would like to see in Elyria. Geopolitics, real geopolitics.
And I guess that was for all of us. I honestly don't even know yet. There's just so many possibilities. I guess that would be my answer. But I know that's kind of a cop-out, but...
I think that at this point in time, I really want to see how many alts I'm going to have. With Revival, I think I was up to at least 27, if not 30 alts, just because of the way the mechanics of that game worked, and I wanted to try everything. And this game, I'm down to 1.5. So let's see if the game can captivate me to
make you into an alcoholic again.
Honestly,
all of
the idea that you can automate them and that they'll all be playing in the world, whether you're there or not, I figure you are going to become the biggest alcoholic we've ever known. You're going to buy so many sparks and souls, like it's going to be paying somebody's wages. That's kind of what I expect.
Okay.
That's maybe not immediately, but once we hit day one of live gameplay after Exposition, I think you're just going to be like throwing in characters left and right.
Okay.
Looks like there's really only one more, and that's probably perfect timing because we're running over. Okay, Polite, what would you do if you end up with the Weird as a tribe?
If I end up with the Weird as a tribe, I'll make them work. The Weird have a lot of cool strengths to them. There's a lot of concern over the communal sharing aspect because, of course, we come into these sorts of games and we're naturally distrusting of one another. You think, oh, in this game, property and stuff matter so much, and I don't want to necessarily have to share with that people. I think that's the standard response, but that's also naive to an extent. The Weird have a lot of strengths to them that if I do end up with them, awesome, and I'll make that work. That's why I've been building a community of people who can learn to trust each other and love each other, because even in that aspect, that becomes a great boon when they're working together, when they're able to share things that easily. When the mechanics are forcing them into that and they're already having that underlying trust among each other, that's a good combination.
All right. Well, we are over, so does anybody have any final words, anything else you want to say?
It was just great to have you on, and definitely look forward to having you back on again in the future. Whenever, awesome. You're an awesome guest.
Oh, thank you. I'll be happy to be here again.
Yeah.
See, I come into games trusting everyone, but
hey.
Hopefully we got out some decent questions, and I think we got some great answers. So it was fun talking with you, Polite. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for giving me great stuff to talk about, guys.
Yeah, it's been an awesome night. All right, guys, we will be back in 2 weeks. Again, we do an every other week. So in between weeks, we actually do an Ashes of Creation show. So if you have any interest in that, we'll be here the same time next week. And Polite, again, thank you very much for joining us. This was a lot of fun and a lot of fun talking to you. So, all right, guys, everyone.
My pleasure.
Have a good night.
See ya.
Bye.